Well, a purported new intercepted communication appears to reveal Russian soldiers feeling abandoned by their leaders. The security service of Ukraine released the recording. Now, CNN cannot vouch for its authenticity, but Ukraine has previously released audio of Russian soldiers and Russian troops using unsecured lines of communication, according to military observers. Take a listen.
We sat there for 3 days without anything. Our commanders, they received provisions, cigarettes, food, and our command have all off. They abandoned everyone and off. We don't even know where they are.
Jackals. Shoot them and that's it.
Just imagine they didn't provide a way to retreat, didn't say anything, didn't even bring foodstuff. Them. Shoot him. Quit. The first one.
Well, joining me now to discuss is retired Army General and former U.S. CENTCOM Commander David Petraeus. General Petraeus, great to have you on set, finally.
Yes.
First, let me ask you, as a general, what do you make of those intercepted communications between Russian soldiers, just giving you a sense of the morale?
Well, it's clearly not very good. Commanders can't fool their soldiers. The soldiers know that they're sharing risk and hardship or not, and it's quite apparent here that that's not the case. That's not surprising, candidly. I mean, this is characteristic. All the way at the top, Vladimir Putin, we haven't heard of him visiting a hospital of wounded soldiers. We haven't seen him comforting grieving widows, none of that. He doesn't want to acknowledge these extraordinary losses that are vastly higher already, just 8 weeks into this war, than they sustained in 9 years in Afghanistan. So again, these commanders don't seem all that concerned about their soldiers. Many of them are draftees, they're conscripts whose tours are supposed to end this month. Their morale, I'm sure, will not be good when they're told that they're extended and so forth. So can't fool them, and they have not been fooled. And there you hear their honest opinions.
We've had discussions about morale among Russian troops before, whether we're talking about the operations now in the east or what we're seeing in Mariupol. What do you make of that?
Well, as you say, I mean, it's hard to know whether it's genuine, but it certainly fits into a pattern in which we've seen a number of things. First of all, the Russians have had very poor communication internally. It's not secure. Often they're just using mobile phones. They haven't got the equipment. Secondly, morale is pretty low in many units. It's got worse. Some evidence that actually Russian troops have not been prepared to sort of fight because of this low morale and particularly poor logistics. And thirdly, I think it does also suggest that the part of the behavior that we're seeing from the Russian troops, where they're often engaging in looting, is really because they haven't got food. They're not being supplied properly. And so they're kind of living off the land. There's a breakdown in discipline in some of the units and really a distrust of the officer corps. Now, that's not true for all units, but certainly I think it does suggest that it is a serious problem for the way that the Russians are operating.
I mean, Russia continues to pile fresh battalions in for the advance that they're making in the east of the country. President Biden today announcing a whole host of new weaponry, saying he's going to go to Congress to get more money in order to provide more. I mean, the message today felt like he was saying these weapons are going to continue to come. And the message to Russia is, you're not fighting Ukraine here. You may be doing it on the ground, but you're fighting NATO's resources. The response in Russia?
Well, we've seen on Russian TV, I think, that they're becoming increasingly angry about this, and they've been trying to reframe it. The sort of the spokespeople that you see on Russian state television for the Kremlin arguing, in fact, they are fighting NATO, but NATO has been clear that they're not going to put any troops in there. But we are seeing more and more resources coming in, and Ukraine needs this because every day, I mean, they're firing tens of thousands of artillery shells. Of course, there is damage on the Ukrainian side. And the Russians are really going to throw everything that they've got now at trying to destroy the Ukrainian armed forces in the Donbass area. This is the victory that's desperately needed on the ground, but perhaps even more importantly, it's politically needed by President Putin to confirm that his invasion is a success.
I mean, that's the crucial point here, I think, is that President Putin, as we've discussed, declaring this so-called victory in Mariupol, he has a point to prove after weeks and weeks of a drawn-out offensive in parts of the country that seems to have failed, and he's moved on now and is focusing on the east. In the midst of all this, a ballistic missile launch, a decision that Putin made, and again sending a very potent message to the West about what and how they should perceive this, 1 month after the United States decided not to do a ballistic missile test because they didn't want the launch to be misconstrued. PR an opportunity here for President Putin or a real threat?
Yeah, well, we saw him again on state television meeting with the Minister of Defense, Shoigu, and I think this is really against the backdrop of the failure. I mean, the defeat in the battle for Kiev, of course, the terrible morale hit that they took when their flagship, the Moskva, was sunk in the Black Sea by the Ukrainians. So trying to get some good PR, declaring victory in Mariupol, although we see that actually there's not really a victory, and the troops haven't yet moved north as we thought they would. And then trying to, I think, signal to NATO that Russia remains a nuclear power. NATO should stay out of this conflict. And lastly, I would say Putin's often used new weapon systems as a backdrop to show his success. So this test was really, I think, an reaffirmation that he is the security president of Russia, that this is how his success should be measured.
Neil, great to get your insights. Thank you so much. Neil Melvin there.